Have you ever thought that having a fixed identity could be your greatest weakness? That the moment you define yourself, you create the walls of your own prison? This video will change how you see power, adaptation, and the invisible force that determines who survives and who perishes in the chaos of change. Because the truth is, the strongest fortresses fall first. The most rigid structures break fastest. The most clearly defined identities become the easiest targets. Law 48 from the 48 Laws of Power states, assume formlessness. By taking a shape, by having a visible plan, you open yourself to attack. Instead of taking a form for your enemy to grasp, keep yourself adaptable and on the move. Accept the fact that nothing is certain and no law is fixed. The best way to protect yourself is to be as fluid and formless as water. Make it a habit to never bet on stability or lasting order. Everything changes. This is the final law. The ultimate law. The law that contains all other laws. Because every other law teaches you a specific technique, a particular strategy, a concrete method. But Law 48 teaches you to transcend all techniques. It teaches you that the greatest power is not having a particular form, but being able to assume any form. Not following a specific strategy, but being able to deploy any strategy. Not committing to a fixed identity, but being able to become whoever the situation demands. Let me tell you why this might be the most dangerous knowledge you will ever encounter. In ancient China, there was a martial arts master named Zhang Sanfeng. According to legend, he created Tai Chi after watching a fight between a snake and a crane. The crane attacked with sharp, direct strikes. The snake moved fluidly, never committing to a position, constantly adapting. The crane's rigidity made it predictable. The snake's formlessness made it invincible. Zhang Sanfeng realized that the secret to martial arts was not strength or speed or technique. The secret was formlessness. The ability to flow like water, to adapt like wind, to be everywhere and nowhere at once. This principle extends far beyond martial arts. It is the fundamental principle of survival, power, and success in any domain. But it contradicts everything society teaches us. We are told to find ourselves, to define our brand, to establish our identity, to commit to a path, to specialize, to be consistent. We are taught that having a clear form is strength. But the opposite is true. In a world of constant change, formlessness is the only true strength. Consider the greatest empires in history. The Roman Empire lasted 1,000 years. How? Not through military might alone. Rome was formless. They absorbed conquered peoples, adopted foreign gods, modified their political system, changed their military tactics. When the republic stopped working, they became an empire. When one emperor failed, they found another. When old strategies failed, they invented new ones. Rome was not a fixed structure. Rome was a constantly adapting organism. And when Rome finally became rigid, when it stopped adapting, when it tried to maintain a fixed form, it collapsed in less than a century. The Mongol Empire conquered more territory than any empire before or since. How? Genghis Khan and his successors were formless. They adopted Chinese administration, Persian culture, and Christian advisors. They used siege weapons from China, tactics from Central Asia, and diplomacy from Persia. They were nomads who could fight like settled people. They were warriors who could govern like administrators. They had no fixed form. And that made them unstoppable. Now compare this to empires that clung to rigid forms. The Byzantine Empire spent centuries trying to restore the glory of ancient Rome. They maintained old structures, old rituals, old ways of thinking. They were magnificent, sophisticated, and completely inflexible. When the Ottomans arrived with new weapons and new tactics, Byzantium shattered like crystal. The Spanish Empire tried to maintain Catholic orthodoxy and colonial monopoly in a world that was moving toward religious tolerance and free trade. Spain became a museum of its former glory, economically stagnant and politically irrelevant. The Soviet Union built its entire identity on communist ideology and central planning. When the world moved toward capitalism and free markets, the Soviet Union could not adapt. It collapsed completely. The pattern is absolute. Formless systems survive. Rigid systems perish. This is not philosophy. This is observable reality throughout history, biology, business, and individual lives. Neuroscience reveals why formlessness is so powerful. Your brain has a property called neuroplasticity. It can rewire itself, create new connections, adapt to new situations. Children have high neuroplasticity. Their brains are formless. They can learn any language, any skill, any way of thinking. As we age, our brains become more rigid. Neural pathways solidify. We develop fixed patterns of thought. We become predictable. We lose adaptability. The people who maintain power throughout their lives are those who maintain neuroplasticity, who keep their minds formless even as their bodies age. But here is where the story gets darker. Society actively works to destroy your formlessness. From the moment you are born, you are pushed toward form. You are given a name, a nationality, a religion. You are told to choose a career, develop an expertise, build a reputation. You are pressured to have consistent opinions, predictable behaviors, a stable identity. Every institution, education, employment, marriage, they all demand that you assume a form and maintain it. And there is a reason for this. People who have form are controllable. They are predictable. They are manageable. A person with a clear identity will behave consistently. They can be relied upon, manipulated, targeted. But a formless person is dangerous. You cannot predict them. You cannot control them. You cannot pin them down. This is why society fears and punishes formlessness. People who change too much are called unreliable, inconsistent, untrustworthy. But these are the people who survive when everything changes. Let me reveal the 3 mechanisms through which form creates vulnerability, and formlessness creates power. The first mechanism is predictability. When you have a clear form, people can predict your behavior. They know what you will do, how you will react, what you value. This makes you exploitable. Your enemies can set traps. Your competitors can anticipate your moves. Your allies can take you for granted. In poker, players call this having tells. In warfare, it is called patterns of behavior. In business, it is called brand identity. Whatever you call it, the result is the same. Predictability is vulnerability. Consider what happened to Blockbuster. Blockbuster had a clear form. They were a retail video rental company. They had stores, late fees, and a specific business model. Everyone knew exactly what Blockbuster was. When Netflix appeared with mail-order DVDs, Blockbuster dismissed them. Why? Because Blockbuster's form limited their vision. They could not imagine being anything other than what they were. Netflix, meanwhile, was formless. They started with mail-order DVDs, then shifted to streaming, then to content production, then to global expansion. Netflix had no fixed identity. They were whatever they needed to be to survive. Today, Netflix is worth over $200 billion. Blockbuster is a memory. The second mechanism is commitment. When you assume a form, you commit resources to maintaining that form. You invest in infrastructure, build systems, hire specialized people, develop expertise. These investments create what economists call sunk costs. Once you have committed resources to a particular form, changing that form becomes expensive and painful. So you resist change, even when change is necessary. You defend your existing form even when that form is becoming obsolete. This is why successful companies often fail when industries change. They are too committed to their current form to adopt a new one. Look at what happened to Kodak. Kodak invented the digital camera in 1975. They had the technology. They had the talent. But they were committed to their form as a film company. They made billions selling film and developing photos. Digital photography threatened that business model. So Kodak suppressed their own invention. They spent decades defending film when the world was moving to digital. By the time Kodak finally tried to transform, it was too late. The company that invented digital photography was destroyed by digital photography. Why? Because they were too committed to their form to change it. Compare this to Amazon. Amazon started as an online bookstore. But Jeff Bezos never committed to that form. When he saw opportunities in other products, Amazon expanded. When he saw opportunities in cloud computing, Amazon built Amazon Web Services. When he saw opportunities in devices, Amazon created Kindle and Alexa. When he saw opportunities in entertainment, Amazon launched Prime Video. Amazon has no fixed form. It is whatever it needs to be. And that formlessness has made Amazon one of the most valuable companies on earth. The third mechanism is target creation. When you have a visible form, you become a target. People know where to attack. Competitors know which markets to challenge you in. Regulators know which practices to investigate. Enemies know which assets to threaten. Your very visibility creates vulnerability. This is why guerrilla forces defeat conventional armies. The army has bases, supply lines, command structures. The guerrillas have none of these. The army can be targeted. The guerrillas cannot. Formlessness makes you untargetable. This principle explains the rise of terrorism and asymmetric warfare. Nation-states have clear forms. They have borders, capitals, governments, armies. This makes them powerful but also vulnerable. Terrorist networks have no fixed form. They have no capital to bomb, no government to negotiate with, no army to defeat. They are everywhere and nowhere. When one cell is destroyed, others remain. When one leader is killed, others emerge. The formless enemy is the most dangerous enemy because there is nothing to attack. Now let me reveal something that sounds wrong but is actually true. Your identity is not your strength. It is your weakness. Everything you think you are, every label you apply to yourself, every role you claim, every belief you hold rigidly, these create the boundaries of your prison. I am an engineer. I am a Democrat. I am an atheist. I am a vegan. I am successful. I am a family person. Each of these statements closes doors. Each one limits what you can do, how you can think, who you can become. This does not mean you should have no values or beliefs. It means you should hold them lightly. You should be able to put them down when they no longer serve you. You should be able to change your mind, reverse your position, contradict your past self without shame. Most people cannot do this. Their ego is attached to consistency. They need to be right. They need to maintain a coherent narrative about who they are. This need for consistency is a chain that binds them to the past and prevents them from adapting to the future. The most powerful people in history understood this. They were whoever they needed to be in each moment. Napoleon was a revolutionary and then an emperor. He promoted equality and then crowned himself. Was he inconsistent? Yes. Was he hypocritical? Yes. Was he formless? Yes. And that formlessness made him the most powerful man in Europe. Franklin Roosevelt governed as a conservative and then as a progressive. He balanced budgets and then created massive deficit spending. He was whatever the moment required. Winston Churchill changed political parties twice. He held contradictory views on empire, democracy, and war. He was formless. And that formlessness saved Britain. In the modern business world, consider Elon Musk. What is Elon Musk? An engineer? A CEO? An entrepreneur? A visionary? A showman? A troll? He is all of these and none of these. He moves between roles effortlessly. One day he is posting memes on social media. The next day he is negotiating billion-dollar contracts. He runs multiple companies in completely different industries. Electric cars, space exploration, brain-computer interfaces, social media, tunneling, artificial intelligence. There is no coherent narrative. There is no fixed form. And this formlessness makes him almost impossible to compete against. How do you fight someone who can be anyone, do anything, pivot instantly? Now compare this to executives who maintain rigid professional identities. They dress a certain way, speak a certain way, maintain appropriate decorum. They are predictable. They are manageable. They rise to a certain level and plateau because their form limits them. Musk has no such limits. He is formless. And in a rapidly changing world, formlessness is the ultimate competitive advantage. This raises a profound question. If formlessness is so powerful, why do so few people practice it? The answer lies in understanding the psychological need for identity and the social pressure for consistency. Humans have a deep psychological need to know who they are. This need is so fundamental that psychologists consider identity formation one of the primary developmental tasks of adolescence and young adulthood. Without a stable identity, people experience anxiety, confusion, and existential dread. The question "who am I" is terrifying when you have no answer. So people construct identities. They choose beliefs, adopt roles, join groups. And once constructed, these identities feel real, permanent, essential. But they are not. They are convenient fictions that provide psychological comfort at the cost of adaptability. The social pressure for consistency is even stronger. Society punishes people who change too much. If you change your political beliefs, people call you a flip-flopper. If you change careers, people question your commitment. If you change your values, people call you unprincipled. If you change your personality, people say you are being fake. This social pressure forces people into fixed forms. And once in those forms, they become invested in defending them. Their ego becomes attached to their identity. Changing their identity feels like dying. So they cling to outdated forms even when those forms are destroying them. This creates a fundamental paradox. The things that give you psychological comfort and social acceptance, clear identity, consistent behavior, firm beliefs, are the very things that make you vulnerable to change. And we live in a world of accelerating change. Technology changes. Markets change. Politics change. Culture changes. The climate changes. In this environment, clinging to a fixed form is not just limiting. It is suicidal. Let me give you a modern example that perfectly illustrates this principle. Consider the story of Nokia, which we touched on earlier, but now through the lens of formlessness. Nokia started as a paper mill in 1865. Then it became a rubber company. Then it made electrical cables. Then it manufactured televisions and computers. Then it dominated mobile phones. Nokia had no fixed identity for 130 years. It was formless. It became whatever was profitable. And this formlessness made it one of the most successful companies in Europe. But something changed in the late 1990s. Nokia became the mobile phone company. They committed to that identity. They built their entire operation around that form. When smartphones emerged, Nokia could not adapt. Why? Because adapting meant abandoning their identity as the king of traditional mobile phones. The company that had successfully transformed itself dozens of times over a century suddenly could not transform one more time. They had lost their formlessness. And that loss destroyed them. Now contrast this with a company like Apple. What is Apple? A computer company? A phone company? A watch company? A services company? A retail company? An entertainment company? Apple is all of these. Apple is formless. When personal computers became commodified, Apple moved to music players. When music players became obsolete, Apple moved to smartphones. When smartphone growth slowed, Apple moved to services and wearables. Apple has no fixed identity beyond making great products. This formlessness has made Apple the most valuable company in history. Or consider Google. Google started as a search engine. Then it became an advertising company. Then it expanded to email, maps, mobile operating systems, self-driving cars, artificial intelligence, cloud computing, hardware, life sciences. What is Google? Nobody knows. And that is exactly the point. Google is formless. It flows into whatever domain offers opportunity. And this formlessness has made it one of the most powerful corporations on Earth. The pattern is clear. In the modern economy, formless companies dominate. Rigid companies die. This is not limited to technology. It applies to every industry. The retail stores that survive are those that embrace e-commerce, delivery, experiences, not those that cling to traditional retail. The media companies that thrive are those that distribute across platforms, not those that defend old formats. The financial institutions that grow are those that adopt fintech, not those that worship tradition. But formlessness is not just for corporations. It is essential for individuals. Your career, your skills, your network, your thinking, all of these must remain formless. The days of choosing one career and sticking with it for 40 years are gone. The average person now changes careers 5 to 7 times in their lifetime. The skills that make you valuable today will be obsolete in 10 years. The network that serves you now will be irrelevant in a decade. If you cling to a fixed professional identity, you will be left behind. This is why the most successful people in the modern world are generalists, not specialists. They have broad knowledge across domains. They can code and write and speak and design and manage. They are comfortable with ambiguity. They change directions quickly. They learn constantly. They have no fixed professional identity. They are formless. And in a world of constant change, these formless individuals have massive advantages over rigid specialists. Let me now reveal the dark truth about formlessness. It requires you to abandon the need to be understood. Most people desperately want others to understand them, to recognize who they really are, to appreciate their authentic self. But if you are formless, there is no authentic self to recognize. You are different in different contexts. You adapt to circumstances. You change as needed. This makes people uncomfortable. They will accuse you of being fake, manipulative, inconsistent. They will not trust you because they cannot pin you down. And you must be comfortable with this. Because being understood is a luxury that formless people cannot afford. This is why Law 48 is so difficult to master. It requires you to sacrifice social approval, psychological comfort, and the need for a coherent self-narrative. It requires you to embrace chaos, uncertainty, and constant transformation. Most people cannot do this. They would rather cling to a sinking ship with a familiar name than board a vessel they do not recognize. They would rather die as who they think they are than survive as someone they have not met yet. Consider the ancient Taoist text, the Tao Te Ching, written by Lao Tzu 2,500 years ago. The entire text is about formlessness. The Tao that can be told is not the eternal Tao. The name that can be named is not the eternal name. Water is fluid, soft, and yielding. But water will wear away rock, which is rigid and cannot yield. The softest thing in the universe overcomes the hardest thing. This is the power of formlessness. Lao Tzu understood 25 centuries ago what modern people are only beginning to rediscover. The ultimate power is the power to be nothing in particular, to flow like water, to adapt like air, to be everywhere and nowhere. Now let me address the practical question. How do you practice formlessness? How do you become fluid in a world that demands solidity? First, you must separate your sense of identity from your current roles and behaviors. You are not your job. You are not your political beliefs. You are not your habits. These are temporary forms you have adopted. They can be changed. Start noticing when you say I am followed by any label. Each time you do this, pause and ask, is this really who I am, or is this just a current form? This simple practice begins to loosen the psychological grip of fixed identity. Second, you must deliberately practice change. Choose something about yourself that feels fixed and change it. Change your daily routine. Change your opinion on something. Change how you dress. Change your social circle. Start small. The goal is not the specific change. The goal is training yourself to be comfortable with change. Most people are terrified of change because they have not practiced it. They have maintained the same form for so long that changing feels impossible. You must prove to yourself that change is possible, that you can be different and survive. Third, you must study formless entities. Watch how water flows around obstacles. Observe how successful companies pivot. Notice how skilled debaters argue different sides of an issue. Read about people who successfully change careers, beliefs, or identities. The more examples of formlessness you encounter, the more normal it becomes. You start to see rigidity as the aberration and fluidity as the natural state. Fourth, you must reduce your commitments. Every long-term commitment is a form. Every fixed expense, every binding contract, every public position you take, these create rigidity. This does not mean you should avoid all commitments. But you should be strategic about which commitments you make. Only commit to things that genuinely serve your interests, not to things that make you look consistent or respectable. Keep as much of your life uncommitted as possible. Maintain flexibility. Preserve options. Fifth, you must develop skills in pattern recognition and rapid learning. Formless people are not ignorant. They are highly informed but hold information lightly. They recognize patterns across domains. They learn quickly in new situations. They synthesize information from diverse sources. Invest in developing these meta-skills. Read widely. Study different fields. Practice learning new skills quickly. The faster you can learn, the faster you can adapt. The faster you can adapt, the more formless you can be. Sixth, you must become comfortable with contradiction. Formless people hold contradictory views simultaneously. They can see the truth in opposing perspectives. They are not bound by the need for logical consistency. This does not mean you should believe everything or stand for nothing. It means you should recognize that reality is complex, that most truths are contextual, that apparent contradictions often coexist. Train yourself to think in terms of both and rather than either or. This opens up possibilities that rigid thinkers never see. Seventh, you must practice strategic opacity. Do not advertise your plans. Do not announce your positions. Do not commit publicly to courses of action. Keep your thinking private. Keep your options open. Make people guess what you will do next. This makes you unpredictable, which makes you powerful. Most people do the opposite. They announce their intentions, explain their strategies, commit publicly to positions. This makes them easy to predict and easy to counter. Formless people reveal nothing until action is required. And even then, they reveal only what is necessary. There is another critical aspect of formlessness that involves timing and awareness. Formless individuals develop an acute sensitivity to environmental changes. They are like animals who sense earthquakes before they happen, or sailors who read the subtle shifts in wind and current. This sensitivity comes from not being locked into a fixed perspective. When your identity is rigid, you filter reality through that identity. You only see what confirms your worldview. But when you are formless, you have no filter. You see reality as it is, not as you want it to be. This unfiltered perception gives formless people a massive advantage. They see trends before others notice them. They sense danger before it becomes obvious. They spot opportunities while others are still looking at yesterday's data. In the financial markets, the most successful traders are those who have no attachment to being bullish or bearish. They simply read the market and adapt. When the market goes up, they go long. When it goes down, they go short. They have no ego invested in being right about direction. They are formless. And this formlessness makes them consistently profitable while rigid traders blow up their accounts trying to prove their predictions correct. The same principle applies to politics and geopolitics. The most successful political leaders are those who can shift positions as circumstances change. They are pragmatists, not ideologues. Margaret Thatcher was a free market conservative who nevertheless maintained the National Health Service because abolishing it would have been political suicide. She was formless enough to compromise when necessary. Ronald Reagan was an anti-communist warrior who nevertheless negotiated arms reduction treaties with the Soviet Union when the opportunity arose. He was formless enough to make peace with his enemies. Contrast this with leaders who cling rigidly to ideology. They go down with their ships, destroying their countries in the process. Socialist leaders who refuse to accept that their economic models have failed even as their people starve. Nationalist leaders who start wars they cannot win because admitting weakness would contradict their identity. Religious leaders who enforce ancient rules even as their institutions crumble. These leaders have form. And that form makes them predictable, exploitable, and ultimately doomed. There is a deeper philosophical dimension to formlessness that connects to how we understand consciousness itself. Modern cognitive science has revealed that the self is not a fixed entity but a process. Your sense of being a continuous, consistent person is an illusion created by your brain. Every moment, your brain constructs a narrative of who you are based on memories, sensations, and social feedback. But this narrative is constantly being revised. The person you think you were yesterday is not who you actually were. It is who you remember being. And memory is notoriously unreliable and constantly edited. This means that at the most fundamental level, you are already formless. You are already changing constantly. You are already becoming someone different every moment. The only question is whether you resist this natural flow or embrace it. Most people resist. They cling to outdated versions of themselves. They try to maintain consistency with who they used to be. This creates enormous psychological stress because they are fighting against the fundamental nature of consciousness. Formless people accept the flow. They allow themselves to change. They embrace the fact that they are not the same person they were last year, last month, or even yesterday. And this acceptance brings enormous peace and power. Consider the concept of ego death in mystical traditions. In Buddhism, enlightenment involves realizing that there is no permanent self. In psychedelic experiences, people often report the dissolution of their ego boundaries. In deep meditation, practitioners experience states where the sense of individual identity disappears. What all these experiences have in common is the temporary dissolution of form. And almost everyone who has these experiences reports them as profoundly liberating. Why? Because maintaining the illusion of a fixed self requires enormous energy. When that illusion drops, even temporarily, you experience the freedom of formlessness. You realize that you were never trapped in one identity. You are always free to be anything. This is why Law 48 is not just about strategic advantage. It is about liberation. When you practice formlessness, you are not just making yourself harder to attack. You are freeing yourself from the prison of identity. You are aligning yourself with the fundamental nature of reality, which is constant change. You are becoming more authentically yourself by recognizing that there is no authentic self to be. This sounds paradoxical, but it is the deepest truth. Let me share one final insight about formlessness that brings everything together. The ultimate expression of formlessness is not having no form. It is having access to all forms. A truly formless person can assume any identity, play any role, adopt any strategy, as circumstances require. They are like actors who can play any character convincingly because they are not attached to any particular character. This does not mean they are fake or empty. It means they contain multitudes. They have developed such a rich internal repertoire of possibilities that they can express whatever the moment calls for. This is the difference between formlessness and shapelessness. Shapeless things are amorphous, undefined, powerless. Formless things are fluid, adaptable, powerful. Water is formless, but it is not shapeless. Water takes the shape of whatever container holds it, but it maintains its essential nature as water. It can be ice, liquid, or vapor depending on temperature, but it is always H2O. This is the model for human formlessness. You maintain your essential nature, your core values and capabilities, but you express them differently in different contexts. You are yourself in every situation, but yourself is not limited to one expression. There is a final dimension to formlessness that involves your relationship with time. Most people are trapped in linear thinking. They see their lives as a story with a beginning, middle, and end. They make decisions based on maintaining narrative consistency. They ask, does this choice align with my past decisions? Does it fit the story of who I am becoming? This linear thinking creates enormous constraints. It forces you to honor past commitments even when they no longer serve you. It pressures you to pursue goals you set years ago even when circumstances have changed. Formless people think cyclically instead of linearly. They understand that life is not a story moving toward one conclusion. Life is a series of cycles, seasons, phases. Sometimes you expand. Sometimes you contract. Sometimes you engage. Sometimes you withdraw. Sometimes you are one thing. Sometimes you are another. There is no contradiction because there is no linear narrative to maintain. Each phase is complete in itself. Each version of you is authentic in its moment. And when that moment passes, you shed that version like a snake sheds its skin. You become something new. This is not inconsistency. This is alignment with natural cycles. Law 48, assume formlessness. By taking a shape, by having a visible plan, you open yourself to attack. Instead of taking a form for your enemy to grasp, keep yourself adaptable and on the move. Accept the fact that nothing is certain and no law is fixed. The best way to protect yourself is to be as fluid and formless as water. Make it a habit to never bet on stability or lasting order. Everything changes. This is the ultimate law because it makes all other laws flexible. Law 1 says conceal your intentions. But Law 48 says sometimes reveal them if that serves you. Law 15 says crush your enemy totally. But Law 48 says sometimes make peace if circumstances change. Every other law is a tool. Law 48 teaches you to hold all tools lightly, to use whatever works in each moment, to never become attached to any particular strategy. The question is, can you live this way? Can you abandon the need for a fixed identity? Can you become comfortable with constant transformation? Can you be whoever each moment requires? Can you flow like water through the obstacles of life? Because if you can, you possess the ultimate power. The power to survive anything. The power to adapt to any situation. The power to become unstoppable because you are untargetable. The power of formlessness. What will you do with this knowledge? That is the final question. Will you cling to who you think you are? Will you defend your current form against the inevitable forces of change? Or will you dissolve into formlessness, becoming fluid, adaptable, eternal? The choice will define not just your success, but your survival. Choose wisely. Because in the end, only the formless endure. Everything else eventually breaks. And so we reach the end of the 48 laws of power. But this is not really an ending. It is a beginning. These laws are not meant to be memorized and forgotten. They are meant to be practiced, tested, refined through experience. Each law is a lens through which to view the world. Each law reveals patterns of human behavior that repeat across centuries and cultures. Each law gives you power, if you have the courage to use it. Think about what you have learned through this journey. From Law 1, never outshine the master, to Law 48, assume formlessness. From the subtle art of concealing your intentions to the ultimate wisdom of abandoning fixed identity. These laws have shown you how power really works. Not the fairy tale version taught in schools. Not the sanitized versions sold in management books. But the raw, uncomfortable, effective truth about how people gain power, maintain power, and lose power. Some of these laws made you uncomfortable. Good. That discomfort means you are confronting reality instead of hiding from it. Some of these laws seemed immoral. Perhaps. But morality and power operate in different domains. You can choose to be moral. You can choose to be powerful. Ideally, you can be both. But first, you must understand how power works. Only then can you decide how to use it. The 48 laws of power are not rules to follow blindly. They are tools to use strategically. Sometimes you will apply one law. Sometimes you will apply its opposite. Sometimes you will combine multiple laws. The art is knowing which law fits which situation. And that knowledge only comes through practice, through observation, through living in the world with your eyes open. You now possess dangerous knowledge. Knowledge that most people will never have. Knowledge that could change your life, your career, your relationships, your future. But knowledge alone is worthless. Only applied knowledge creates results. So the question is, what will you do now? Will you return to your old patterns, your old assumptions, your old limitations? Or will you begin practicing these laws? Will you start observing power dynamics around you? Will you experiment with different strategies? Will you become formless? The choice is yours. But remember this. Power abhors a vacuum. If you do not take power, someone else will. If you do not master these laws, you will be manipulated by those who have. If you do not become strategic, you will be a pawn in someone else's strategy. This is not pessimism. This is realism. And realism is the foundation of all power. But this is not the end. Your journey into understanding power, influence, and human nature continues. We have explored all 48 laws, but there is always more to learn, more patterns to recognize, more strategies to master. The world of power is infinite. Every interaction is a lesson. Every success is a teacher. Every failure is a gift. We will continue exploring these themes in future videos. We will examine historical examples in greater depth. We will analyze modern applications of these laws in business, politics, and personal relationships. We will reveal advanced strategies that combine multiple laws. We will show you how the most powerful people in the world use these principles, often without knowing they are doing so. If you found value in this exploration of the 48 laws of power, make sure to subscribe to this channel. Hit that subscribe button so you do not miss the next insights we share. We have covered all 48 laws in detail, and each one contains wisdom that could transform your understanding of power. Go back and watch the other videos from this series. Law 1 through Law 47. Each law builds on the others. Each law reveals another dimension of power. Watch Law 3 about concealing your intentions. Watch Law 16 about using absence to increase respect and honor. Watch Law 28 about entering action with boldness. Watch Law 33 about discovering each person's thumbscrew. Watch Law 40 about despising the free lunch. Every single law contains practical wisdom you can apply immediately. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into human nature, power dynamics, and strategic thinking, let us know in the comments. Tell us which law resonated most with you. Tell us which law you find most difficult to apply. Tell us your stories of seeing these laws in action. Share your experiences. Ask your questions. This is not just content we create. This is a community of people who understand that knowledge is power, and applied knowledge is ultimate power. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the 48 laws of power. Thank you for having the courage to confront uncomfortable truths. Thank you for seeking knowledge that most people avoid. You are now part of a small group of people who understand how power really works. Use this knowledge wisely. Use it ethically when you can. But above all, use it effectively. This is not the end. This is just the beginning. We will see you in the next video. Until then, stay formless. Stay adaptable. Stay powerful.